You're watching Maverick Media. Educate, organize, act.
I'm Camille Harris with Save Our Homes here in Ventura, California, and we are having conversations today about a change in code policies that went proactive from complaint-based and a system that appears to be subjective and punitive. So we're looking at changing that. And in learning, we learn the most from people who have been victimized in a sense by code enforcement policies as they exist today. And so today I have here Rosie Strobush and her son Eric, and I want them to share their experience with you of what the process was like for them. And Rosie, who first contacted you from code enforcement?
Kevin Quinn, he came to our front door and he was pretty much forcing his way into our house through fines. Through like either we let him view our backyard or else we would be fined $475 a day up until he was able to view our backyard.
So you felt threatened.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, that's a huge amount of money. Was there any cap on the number? Was it for 5 days, or do you know?
No.
No.
There was no cap.
There was no cap. So in 10 days, it could have been over $4,000. Oh, dear. So at that point, then, did you decide to let them onto the property?
No, because we did not reply because we were so scared. And then he called me, and I was so frightened, terrified. And then he came to the door again, and my son did not let him in again. And then that's when he got upset with my son. And he started threatening my son at the front door.
Yeah.
And he said that someone was living in our storage shed. He saw windows, curtains, door, and no one's living in our storage shed. So, and he said he could see it from the street. So I went to the street, and it wasn't that visible. And then he'd have to really, peek over and take a look and everything.
Okay. So now I understand that your parents left you the home, and you live in the front unit, and your brother Lewis lives in the back unit?
Yes.
Okay. And how did this unit come about? Was it always there, the second unit?
This unit was there. It was owned by Bailey's, the ambulance service. It was a retirement home. And so they used that. They converted that garage into a room, and it had a shower and a sink. And they housed senior citizens there as well as the rest of the house.
Now, and how long had your brother been living there when code enforcement came?
About 29 years. Something like 29 years. More like 30 now.
Okay, so he's been living there for 30 years. And what is his health condition?
He is terminally ill. And so this has affected him quite a bit, and it's made him very sick and full of anxiety, emotional distress. We've all suffered tremendously emotional distress.
He actually became bedridden during the time where we were being threatened, because it was just so much stress, and it was really bad.
And it's my understanding now that the only remedies open to you are either to gut the unit in which he lives or to pay a $17,000 impact fee. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So where does it stand now? Are you kind of in limbo?
We're in limbo.
So you don't know what's going to happen. I understand that you were told that a part of your home had to be demolished because the city could not find permits. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. It was a room extension.
And the city said there were no permits.
That they said they were going to have to research it.
Okay. And so you instead researched it, correct?
Yes, correct. And we found a permit.
And where were those permits? Were they at the city?
They were at the city. But When we went to the city to look for the permits, they were all mixed up. There were other houses, other addresses that were in our file with the city. So they were scattered permits.
So you thought that you were going to have to tear off part of your house because the city said there were no permits.
Yes. Lucky we found the permit, or that house would have had to been demolished. That part of that section of the house.
So did the city say that they had lost some permits?
They admitted that they've lost permits, but I have copies of all my permits, and there are permits under my address that belong to other houses, so they're all mixed up. And they do remove permits, and they do switch them around, but they do hire an outside person to do that. I was told that at the front desk.
What remedy do you think would get the sword of Damocles from over all of the people who live in older homes like you do? What do you think the solution would be?
To grandfather these units in.
And would you put any requirements on that as far as any agreements with the city in exchange for grandfathering?
I would have to say just safety.
Now, when you were scared and going through all of this stress, was there any third objective ombudsman that you could speak with?
No.
Okay. Do you think that would help to have an objective third party
Yes.
that does not work for the city?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, we're all working on this together, and I believe that in such an old town as Ventura, there's no way out except for grandfathering. I mean, they'd have to put us all in jail. So,
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
yeah. So you guys keep your spirits up, and thank you for coming and participating today in this public workshop. That's what it's going to take.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Okay. We're here today with two more people who are sharing their experiences of the effects of our current code enforcement policies here in Ventura, California. There are thousands, literally, of second units in this old town that have provided affordable housing for young couples, for family members, for seniors, for students, for artists, for decades. And when the proactive code enforcement program started and code enforcement went from door to door to door, people that were living in these second units suddenly had to be evicted. And there's a wonderful young couple here today that actually their mother owned the property, and she was put in the position of having to evict her own son. So anyway, I want to introduce you now to Clay, Kid, and Christina. Now, tell me what this was like for you.
Well, I actually came back to Ventura because I went to high school here and everything, and moved to LA to get a job, got a great paying job as an artist, and realized it's about time to start a family, so there's no way I'm going to do that in Los Angeles when Ventura can be an option.
Right.
It took me a month to move from Los Angeles to Ventura. It was very stressful and completely stressful. And when we did finally land in here, of course, it's a better school system, and everything that's great about it is wonderful, except for the fact I had to move within 3 months. Again, immediately. And I was lucky that my mother, of course, was nice enough to let me know way ahead of time. But I know I have friends that were in a different boat, and it was strictly business, and they had to leave their apartments. So if you take away the affordable housing, where do you expect the kids to live? And kids, I'm 36 years old, and you're taking away affordable housing. The economy isn't good enough to take anything like that away right now, period, at all. So I don't know. I lucked out and found a place that I guess is permitted.
But you don't really know.
No,
That's
but
right.
it's no less updated than anything else I've ever lived in. I find all of these so-called substandard housing to be great places that nobody has ever complained about living.
Yes.
Period.
And why do you think that suddenly now they're going after these? And
To me, it's obviously about money. If you're going to be a government for the people, by the people, you're trying to work with people. Therefore, reduce the fines. Don't make it impossible to bring these places up to date. I don't know anybody that doesn't want their place permitted and legal.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody. And I know that my mom was sold this house that way. She didn't create this substandard so-called unit.
Right.
So to me, it's also, wait, now you can sell places with substandard? Like, how has this whole system been working up till now? We need to go ahead and make it much easier for these people to bring them up to date, up to code, and affordably. Because a lot of these people depend on these houses for their income, unless we're going to create thousands of jobs for the elderly overnight.
Right.
Which is cruel.
Assuming too that they could fulfill them. Right. Okay.
So that to me, it's got to be changed, and the people need the people up. I when I went to the city council meeting and spoke about this, I felt that I was looking at a city council full of people that have probably changed their water heaters once or twice and not gotten a permit, and none of them were under inspection or had any problems. Just the poor end of the avenue. And the poor people got squeezed, I noticed.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not against the rich. Hey, good for you if you are. But don't exclude yourself from the rules. Don't. That's not fair, and it's very obvious to me.
So you felt that it was subjective, that they picked certain areas?
Absolutely. They weren't walking down Midtown or anywhere else looking down driveways and taking pictures. And if that were the cops that were doing that, that would be a real privacy issue that citizens could really complain about. So I also don't think building inspectors necessarily want to be doing that either. I know they just have a job to do, but they're not comfortable snooping around people's houses. Nobody likes to do that.
Right.
You know?
Now, this was a change in policy going proactive from complaint-based. And there was no notice to the community when they changed that policy. Based on that, do you think that those people who were lassoed should get amnesty?
I don't think that they've necessarily done anything wrong so that they should require amnesty. I think grandfathering would be a much more plausible solution. I also find that a lot of complaints, though, are normally the building inspector winds up showing up and to two neighbors that absolutely hate each other, and they'll do anything they can to ruin another one's life. So I don't really find the complaints necessarily always the most valid reason for going and invading someone's privacy and basically tearing apart their lives and income property.
So you think that changing it from a punitive-based system to an incentive-based system?
Yeah, of course, of course. Nobody wants to lose the affordable housing. There's not enough as is. So, and look, the neighborhood was built in the 20s, so I heard the complaint about driveways being too small and the renters park on the street. Well, we have to work with that. That's just the neighborhood at the time it was built, so we're going to have to deal with it accordingly. Where I moved from LA, you're lucky to find a spot within 3 blocks of your house. So to me, parking is fantastic in Ventura, still on the avenue.
Right. I know. My daughter lives in San Francisco, and I drive around the block a dozen times.
If I can park in front, if I can park where I can see my house, I figure I'm close enough.
Parking without a meter too.
Yeah, parking without a meter. So
That's right.
It's wonderful here, you know.
Well, listen, we just appreciate
Of
so
course.
much your coming
Absolutely.
today and shedding some light on what it's like as a firsthand experience dealing with the current system. And because of your input and your help, I'm sure that we'll make it a better place.
And look, we're working people that pay taxes, et cetera. We're not asking for handouts. We're asking for affordable rent.
Right.
That's
so
all.
that you can spend money here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I can. Yes, that's the whole point. Yeah. That's
And
the
stay
whole
in
point.
Ventura. Okay.
Right.
Well,
Thank you very much,
Thank
Kim.
you so much. Thank you,
bet.
Christina.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm here today with Jim Monahan. He is known as the friend of the little guys and certainly the native Venturans. He's gone to school with them and grown up here, and he knows the history better than anybody. Jim, when I know that you are the one council person who voted against proactive code enforcement, and I'm wondering why you did that. You are the one guy who stood against it.
You can see the problems that it's causing, obviously, and I think that there are ways to deal with the problems, and I think a lot were mentioned here today that we really need to consider. I hope the council's mind is open enough that we can look at some of the ordinances that other cities have that deal with this problem, because it's a problem all over California, not just in Ventura.
Right.
And so I think there are ways to deal with it in a fair, equitable way. And so we're looking forward to more dialogue. I hope the dialogue continues and we don't try to just ram something down the citizen's throat and say this is it.
I share that concern. I think it's being a little rushed because I know that they want to do it in November, but the amnesty goes until June 2011. And they're saying now that this all has to be written up in 2 weeks to go to the Planning Commission. And I see an easy month's worth of writing here. Do you think the council would be willing to extend the time a little bit?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I think the council's been fairly open-minded about it and have extended it in the past, and I don't see the urgent need to rush it through when it's not really even thoroughly considered. And I would like to have, as I said before, a ad hoc committee from the council
Oh, that'd be great.
to look into the ordinances that other cities have.
And also, I noticed that in budgeting for outcomes, they said that all of the code should be reviewed every 4 years. But of course, the more codes, then the more opportunities for revenue generation. I'm wondering if there could be an objective third party or an ad hoc committee to review the building and safety codes.
Well, most of the building safety codes are state generated, and we follow a standard code. Usually it's not developed by the city. The rates are set by a firm that does a study that what we call a full cost recovery, which I think is a little bit heavy. And I've always been against this full cost recovery because we formed a city to serve the people, not to
Punish them?
well, the problem too is the state's been taking all of our operating money from our property tax, so it makes it tough. They have to find other places to get it. And so that was an easy one to approach that way.
But do you think giving people with police powers, requiring them to be self-funded is a good idea?
No, I never have.
No, I agree.
And I hope that we get back to a more, go back to our old system, at least for the interim. I don't think we have the money or the time to continue trying to rewrite this. I haven't seen what the staff has proposed yet. So.
Okay. Well, we're counting on you. Thank you, Jim. We are here in Ventura known as California's new art city. And so our artists are really precious to us in our community. Most artists need low cost, affordable housing. And Mike is, and because of the complaint-based system, people are afraid to turn in, say, somebody who's got 50 quacking ducks, next door to you or something, because then they're going to be retaliated against. And that's exactly what happened to Mike. And Mike can tell this story better than anybody, but here is a person who needs affordable housing who is threatened now with losing his. Mike, thanks for coming by today, and thanks for helping to lead this charge for artists and people who need affordable housing. In your particular situation, what happened actually? Can you tell us how that came about?
Well, I had a problematic neighbor who had about 60 birds and about 9 macaws, and it was causing the neighborhood a lot of grief. Tried to approach the guy and was uncooperative, so went to the city. I said, what do I do? They said, well, you need to file a complaint, but you need more than one. You need several complaints. So I went door to door and I got my several complaints, and he turned around and filed a complaint about me. It only takes one complaint from him, but it took 3 or 4 complaints to file against an animal.
Wow.
But only one complaint to file against
a human.
A human.
Oh my gosh.
Which is pretty ridiculous.
Right.
So that set the ball in motion. And code enforcement lets me know they need to inspect, that they believe there is a safety hazard. I questioned them, what happens if I don't? They said, well, we'll have a sheriff, we'll have a warrant, and we'll bring the fire department.
So you were threatened?
Oh yeah, they made it very clear that that's what would happen if I said no. They said, you could say no, but we're going to do this. And that went on for, a number of weeks. And I kept trying to get more information out of them. And I got little bits here and there. Eventually it kind of snowballed. And I finally, talked to my landlord and I said, what should we do? And he said, they don't need to come in.
That's right.
But the funny thing is, they never ever asked me directly, can we come in? I just was simply getting information. And they told me, once you open that door, you can't close it. They said, when you open that door, we have the right to go on any building on the property. We can go to your building, we can go to the house in the front. They said, we can go anywhere on your property because it's by your invitation. You've allowed us in. You said come in and when we asked you to. So that tells you, you know,
Right.
you cannot let them in because by their own rules, they're going to go crazy and just kind of write you up for whatever they see.
So did you have to prove that your place was safe so they didn't get a warrant, or how did you work
Well,
that?
finally, after months go by, I finally, you know, I thought, well, I'll just get a safety report, an independent safety report. And they finally agreed that if I had a safety report, they would they would rescind the 30-day notice they put on my fence outside.
Jeez.
And it wasn't until, you know, I provided that they basically backed off, but it wasn't quite that easy. It took a lot of talking, a lot of letter writing. It took writing letters to the newspapers. It took making this issue public before they would back off. And it wasn't until then that after, you know, even talking to the city attorney, that I finally got a little relief after, you know, weeks and months of stress.
Well, you know, you're an amazing guy. There's not many people that would, A, have the courage, have the knowledge to stand up and speak up and fight City Hall, basically. They say you can't fight City Hall. Well, you actually have done that. And so I have to commend you for your courage and your integrity. And what you're doing is a great example for other people who feel intimidated or scared. So you really did stand up for your Fourth Amendment rights. And what do you think is a solution to this complaint-based system that we have?
Well, you can't allow, I spoke with code enforcement personally, and they told me 90% of their cases are neighbors that don't like each other. 90%. That's
So-
a high percentage.
Yeah, so it's a club everybody's got because everybody has code violations.
Right, and
in
all
an
it
old
takes,
town.
all it
Yeah.
takes is people that don't get along. I believe you should probably have 2 or more complaints to make it legitimate. It should take more than one single complaint to get code enforcement to your door.
That's a great idea.
You know, you
It's true.
either need the landlord complaining or joining neighbors to show that it is a safety and health violation.
Or several, right.
Or several.
That's a great idea. And what do you think of the grandfathering solution?
Well, it's obvious that we have thousands of these, and I know because I and a crew of guys put
You've
out.
researched.
Well, we put 4,000 flyers on everyone's door, 4,000 homes,
Wow.
and in those 4,000 homes, there were thousands of granny flats and extra units that were visible, that you could see.
Yeah.
And it's obvious that we need them. They're used. Every one of them is occupied.
It's affordable housing.
It's affordable housing. I've lived in this type of unit for the past probably 10 years. Some had beautiful ocean views. I mean, they're not shacks. They are nice little places to live. And a lot of us don't want to live in apartments. I don't want to live in an apartment. I'd rather live in a little yard, and
Yeah.
enjoy a little garden or something.
Grow some basil or something.
And be out, have some outdoor area to sit. I don't, I'm
Well,
not,
you're an artist, too.
Yeah, you need a little inspiration.
And you need the light. Yeah.
You need the light, and I prefer that way of living. We shouldn't all be forced to live in apartments. And this is really the only affordable housing there is. All you have to do is look on Craigslist. There is no other affordable housing. This is the lowest you'll find is granny flats and guest houses.
Lots of people, now I've talked to people with these units, and they say that they won't let anybody from the city on their property to legalize the unit because they're in these old houses that have had multiple owners, and they're afraid that the main house and the rest of the property would be written up. And that seems to be a detrimental hurdle for people to get these second units legalized. And so do you think that the grandfathering should cover the whole property?
Well, I think they should definitely grandfather the living units that are on there, whether they've been a converted garage or whether they're, as long as it's safe.
Yeah.
And that's really the issue.
It is the issue, yeah.
I mean, if it's a critical parking, there's always a solution for that. If you've got extra carports, if you've got an extra space, or even if your neighbor lets you park in their area, that should all be considered.
Yeah.
So nobody wants crowded, neighborhoods packed with people. But
Right.
if we don't have housing, we're going to have condos around every corner. They're going to be. You talk about high density. That's going to give you a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And right now, we've got thousands of good units that are working fine.
Well, and normally affordable housing doesn't pay any property taxes. the official like government affordable housing. So we are the ones who subsidize the city services, but these that are organically done from the community do pay property taxes.
Well, everyone wants to get away from that fear. You know, you don't want to be afraid and have to hide, and that's what's happening right now. It's forcing citizens here to hide. I spoke with many people who wouldn't even add my name to any of this because they were so afraid of being discovered. Renters and owners.
Yeah.
Owners just put their head in the sand going, go away, go away.
Yeah.
The problems aren't going to go away. People will make decisions for you. You have to decide, if we want this for our kids or you want this for the future of this city, you're going to have to do something. And the reason I got involved is because it finally came knocking on my door. It literally was my door.
Yeah, right.
And that's kind of the motivation that most people need. When it applies to them, then they go, well, I better do something.
Yeah.
And this is the first civically thing I've ever done in this, and I've been here 35 years.
Wow.
And it was basically to survive.
Isn't that something?
It's to survive. It's to get a place, to keep a place.
A roof over your
head. A roof over my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it affected me that much, that I had to do something. I looked in the paper. There wasn't anything else I could afford, and right now I couldn't afford. Business is down for me 70%, at least. I lost 70% of my customers that went out of business.
Well, and a lot of us have lost our jobs and we've lost our retirement, and this is a changed world. If you look at the property maintenance code, half of the code is what they're going to do to you if you don't do what they said. And the enforcement policies, they do have discretion over. So those could be taken out of the property maintenance code. And instead of turning people over for foreclosure because they can't pay the fines, they could go to small claims court. And in small claims court, you have an objective arena, which you don't now.
Right.
Because if you go to appeal, those are people who are appointed by the city, so that's not an objective. But if you go to a small claims court, you've got a judge. So that's one of the policies that I'm hoping that they change.
Well, that'd be a good idea. I mean, because you've got to have some more resources. It can't just be one choice.
Right.
And the only choice.
Yeah, you got it. Well, listen, Mike, I can't thank you enough. You have been a wonderful example and role model for all of us.
I have to tell you, it's you and Helen Junker that inspired me to even say a word.